This is the generic syllabus for Metaphysics, PHI 3500. Since it is generic, be sure to look at the actual specific syllabus for the semester, and it can be found on Canvas as a PDF. I'm Dr. Michael Labossiere, been teaching at FAMU since 1993, and before that I went to The Ohio State University. They make us say the. My office is in 203 Tucker Hall. The phone there is 850-561-2839, and my email is michael.labossiere@famu.edu. This generic syllabus is being filmed during the pandemic of 2020, and hence the fall 2020 semester, I won't be in my office. And the phone is there, so I won't be answering that. But I will obviously be responding to email, and I also have Zoom contact information. And once the pandemic is done, then my office will once again be 203 Tucker Hall. Well, it still is, but just not there. My office hours are semester specific, so be sure to look at the particular syllabus for this semester, and of course I'll also be putting them on Canvas, allowing people to sign up for in-person or virtual office hours, and of course you can also just drop by. The class, like all my classes, splits into 4 parts. I always just use the 4-part system because it helps to organize it, and seems to work out pretty well for grading. If you had a class with me before, you've seen me doing this before. Part 1 is the introduction, and covers, shockingly enough, the introduction to metaphysics. We'll also look at some of the super dead guys who kept metaphysics in the West going, namely our good dead friends, people like Thales, and also the famous dead guys, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. In Part 2, we'll take a look at God, properties, substance, and reality. Part 3, causation, chance, immortality, and minds. In Part 4, persons and personal identity. Now on Canvas, I'll have a much more detailed guide to the actual readings and content, and I'll do regular announcements, so you always know, what is coming up, and what we'll be covering. And again, this is just a generic syllabus to lay out the basics. Now in terms of the grade stuff, your grade in the class depends on 3 main things: the paper, the exams, the quizzes. There's one paper, and it counts, and it's 30% of the grade. There are separate videos on the paper which go through in detail, like how to do a draft, how to write the paper, etc. And so those subjects are covered in separate videos. There's also a very detailed PDF guide to the paper, which walks you through, exactly what I'm looking for, exactly how to write it in terms of the structure, how it's graded. And there's also a complete sample paper, so if you've never done a paper in philosophy or metaphysics before, you can see what it looks like. And my assumption is that people taking this class have most likely not done metaphysics before, and are likely to not have taken philosophy classes before. So there's no assumption that you already know how to do this stuff. For the exams, there are a total of 5 exams, including the final. The best 4 of them count. They're 40% of your grade. Now for sections 1 through 4, each section, each part, has its own exam that covers that part and that part alone. So exam 1, part 1, exam 2, part 2, exam 3, part 3, exam 4, part 4. These exams consist of each 25 true-false, 25 multiple choice. When you start the timer, you have 1 hour to complete the exam. And the timer works like in a movie theater. If you remember in the before time when there were movie theaters in operation, if you left the theater to purchase snacks, for example, for some other reason, the movie would keep on going. And the exams and also the quizzes are the same way. Once you start the timer, it keeps on going, so exiting the page doesn't stop the timer. So be sure you have an hour to complete an exam. Now, the 4 exams that are the best count out of 5. This allows you to use the final in a couple ways. One way, perhaps the best, is that if, once you've done 4 exams, all the quizzes you wish to do in the paper, you can use the grade estimator on Canvas, download the Excel or Google Sheets version, punch in the grades, punch in hypothetical final score, and see what the final could or could not do. If the final cannot help you mathematically, it can't help you. So taking it would do nothing. If the final could help you, then you'll be able to determine that with the grade estimator. Then if you take it, you could improve your grade. But if you do worse on the final than the other 4, it gets dropped. So aside from the potential of, I guess, emotional damage from taking a final, it can't hurt your grade at all. So the final is a bit different from the first 4 exams. Again, there are 50 questions in total, 1 hour. The final covers everything. It's comprehensive. And there are 50 true-false, 50 multiple-choice questions, and you have 2 hours to complete it. And its primary purpose, aside from being a comprehensive final designed to assess your whole performance in the class, its primary function from a practical standpoint is to give you a chance at another grade to replace, say, a bad exam that's bad for whatever reason, or to just do really well on the final. There are also quizzes. The best 10 out of 15 plus count. They're 30% of your grade. As of this video being recorded, there's about 30 quizzes in total, including some bonus ones, but more about that in class. So the way the quizzes work is this. If you go to the particular quiz, you'll see what it covers, and each quiz has a description saying, what it covers, like saying that it covers, say, Thales, or, Descartes' first meditation, or whatever particular subject it covers. And once you start the quiz, you'll find therein 5 true-false questions about that subject area. You have 5 minutes to complete it, and just like with the exams, the timer keeps on ticking, even if you leave the quiz. So be sure you have the full 5 minutes to complete it. So those are the categories. Paper, 30%, exams, best 4 out of 5 count, 40%, quizzes, best 10 out of 15, plus, they're about 30 right now, and they're 30%. Now, one final point about the course evaluation. For the grades, Canvas does not delete or hide the quizzes or exam that it's dropping, so you won't see it deleted or vanished. I usually get emails each semester and people start to panic and say, the grades are still there, why are they being deleted or dropped? And well, they're not deleted, but they are, the best ones are kept, but you won't see like a visual marker for that. You won't see like a big well, that's a bad letter choice. You won't see like some sort of symbol beside it saying, this has been dropped, don't worry about this anymore. But it will be done, the math is done in the background correctly. Grade scale, pretty standard. A, 90 to 100, B, 80 to 89, C, 70 to 79, D, 60 to 69, F, 0 to 59. So, pretty stock grading scale. There's a wide range of policies. These are all spelled out in detail on the PDF syllabus. The gist of it is academic honesty. Basically, be honest. Attendance. If it's an in-person class, if we ever have those again, we'll have them again. Just a matter of time. That would be showing up in person. And if it's an online class, a virtual class, it would mean if it's a class that occurs like at a particular time, meeting in virtual person, then it would mean being there. If it's a online entirely class, not, where you can go and view stuff at any time you want, it would involve doing the work. Plagiarism is bad. Dress standards, that's again specified by official FAMU policy on the syllabus in detail. Grade policy is also specified there. behavior, basic ideas, behave well. The class is primarily conducted on Canvas, especially now when everything or most things are online. And so be sure that you're familiar with Canvas. I've included on Canvas, and I do see the irony of that, a link to various Canvas guides. And I'm also will have a video that walks you through this particular course in Canvas. If there are any changes, like to times or things, I'll always announce them in Canvas. Any changes that occur. Other policies, cheating is, well, bad. The class complies with all relevant requirements, regulations, etc. Now, email, and actually even in the before time and the after time, email is probably the best way to contact with me because it works 24 hours a day, and I don't have to be in my office to get it. I'd get a grade in the class, you got to be enrolled. Excuses, generally, if you need an excuse, it needs to be an official excuse. But for the most part, because the exams and quizzes and everything is online, typically the traditional need for excuses because you missed the in-person exam won't be a factor. Extensive absences. If you do miss quite a few classes, either virtually or in-person classes, let me know as soon as possible. That way I can work with you. There's also frequently asked questions that I have on posted on Canvas. You can look at those. Grade discussion. Always happy to discuss grades. If you believe there's an issue with a particular grade on an exam or quiz, they've been well checked, etc. But this is our first semester using Canvas, and the transition into Canvas from Blackboard could have caused some problems. So if you do see an issue, contact me, and I'm obviously always happy to fix problems. In regard to the paper, I do have a clear rubric for the paper, but grading a paper is not like grading, say, a logic exam or a math exam. There is a degree of subjectivity. So I'm always happy to discuss the grade on the paper, and discussions are risk-free, unless there's some sort of odd confession of plagiarism or something. And so generally encourage people to discuss grades. If you believe the grade is unjust, unfair, or correct, always let me know. I'm always happy to talk about it and to make sure that any problems are resolved. For the grade information, Canvas Gradebook, it updates in real time for the automated exams and quizzes, and I put the paper grades in as soon as I grade them, and so you'll always be able to see your grades in real time. And when it comes to the papers, you're really good about grading them as quickly as possible, consistent with fair grading. I usually get them done the next day, and if I don't, that means something usually terrible has gone wrong. But fortunately, nothing terrible has gone wrong in recent years. I mean, for grading purpose. Obviously, some things have gone terribly wrong. Incompletes. The incompletes are specified in the syllabus, all the grade details. Generally, it's better to try to complete the class if you can, because incompletes are always a real hassle for everybody, to be honest. I'm happy to work with students, of course, to make that happen, but taking an entire class when the class is not perhaps being offered can be problematic. So generally better to avoid those if at all possible, but of course I am always happy to work with students to see to it that everyone is treated justly and fairly. With makeups, since everything all the tests and quizzes and paper are online, and as you'll see, you have a fairly extensive amount of time to work on them, normal makeups aren't really a thing anymore. For example, you get, for all the exams 1 through 3, you get a month beyond the due date for that particular exam to complete it. And so normal makeups, really not a thing. But if some unusual circumstances should arise where you do need a special makeup, again, I'm always happy to work with you. There are, of course, particular policies about the paper are specified in the paper guide. The last day of my office hours is the last day to take care of your normal course business except for the final. And again, that's mainly so things are done on time and we don't have to work on some sort of, problem past like deadlines for grade changes, etc. Now, if you happen to be in unusual or special circumstances that impact the course, and since these are unusual or special, I can't say exactly what they are, the thing to do is contact me as soon as possible. Let me know how it impacts the course, what you're able to do, and we'll work out a plan to, enable you to work through the course. And I'm always happy to work with people who are in unusual or special circumstances and need things, done. Any reasonable, accommodation, any reasonable adjustment will, of course, be made to ensure that you're able to successfully complete this course. The Academic Learning Compact. Now, we have the ALC page, which is at www.famu.edu/assessment. And essentially, for philosophy and religion, we have the following ALC. The first is written communication, essentially the idea being that you'll learn writing stuff, in this case through the paper. Second is critical thinking, which we'll discuss in the context of argument basics, as well, of course, philosophical reasoning. Thirdly, includes the critical concepts and methods of philosophy, and we'll see those throughout the course of the course. This course, however, does not directly address ethical and social responsibility because it's metaphysics, but we will get at it indirectly, especially when we talk about persons. Lastly, doing research to generate original written contributions. We'll be writing a paper. So that's the ALC stuff. If you want to see more of that stuff, it's on the assessment webpage, and that's the Academic Learning Compact. There's also the QEP. This is not a QEP course per se in terms of being specifically designed for that, but the QEP, of course, now is right on about writing, and we'll be doing writing and stuff, so in case the administrator asks, I did talk about the QEP. For the calendar is semester specific. I'll have posted in the syllabus, obviously, the dates for things, and Canvas, if you haven't looked at it yet, has actually a really good calendar and syllabus feature. In this case, the syllabus feature is listing all the stuff, when it's due, when the deadlines are, enabling you to go there and, clicking on it like a link on a web page, which actually is what it is. And that's, pretty handy. I'm also putting out announcements on a regular basis, letting you know, like, exactly what's, coming up in terms of deadlines and due dates. That way it's never a mystery as to what is due when. Now for the exams, and this might be a little confusing, but I do this essentially to help people, which may cause more confusion than help. But anyways, so each exam, except for exam 4 and 5, have both a due date and a deadline. And a good question is, what's the difference? Aren't they the same? Well, the due date, to use a bit of a pun, is when you should do it. The deadline is when you have to do it by then or it's not going to be done. So for the exams, the first 3, the due date is the end of that part. And once you finish that part, it's a good idea to do the exam then because it will be fresh in your memory. But for exams 1 to 3, you get an extra month beyond that, and that is the deadline. Now, exam 4, which occurs at the end of the semester, and the final, there's no difference between their due date and the deadline. They just have a deadline because there's no month after the final or the end of the semester. The quizzes just have deadlines. Now, for each part, the deadline for the quizzes for that part is the end of that part, and those are specified on the syllabus. So exams 1 through 3, you get a month after their due date to do them. That takes care of the makeup stuff. With the quizzes, you get the whole, part to do them in, and you can do them, do one like each week or a couple each week, or you can wait until the last day of the deadline and do them then, but they got to be done by the deadline. Now, if something goes wrong, essentially my main options are pretty much, clear the attempt to reset it or submit it as is. My default is clear attempt. So if you email me and say, hey, exam 3 is messed up, I'll go and look at it, see if there's an actual issue with it, and my default is just clear the attempt. If you email me and say, hey, exam 3 is messed up, can you just submit it for me? I can do that too. But again, my default is clear attempt. I do monitor my email, especially around, deadlines. However, except for like night classes, I generally stop, checking my email around 5 p.m. So if you're going to, take an exam and you're concerned there might be issues, be sure to, complete it before I'm done for the day. And there's a chance that I might check it late, but I try to, not be too obsessive about checking emails because, well, we all know why that can be bad. So anyways, I do keep an eye on my email, but as a practical matter, I don't guarantee that I'm checking my email after 5 unless it's for a day when I have a night class, in which case I'll be, checking my email, appropriately for that. The paper. Now this may seem confusing, and I've considered, just going to the old, system of there's just one deadline, you don't get that, and that's bad. But here's a system I use. Now there's a draft due date, and there's a draft deadline. And again, the difference is this. The draft due date is when you should probably do the exam. Again, bad pun. The deadline is the last time you can actually turn in a draft, have me look at it, and get it back to you in time because of the paper on time bonus deadline date. Now that's the date by which the paper has to be turned in through Canvas in a readable format, like Word or PDF. And if you do it in by that deadline, you get your base score plus 5. People often ask about extra credit. That's the main extra credit. You get 5 points added onto your paper grade for doing the paper on time. What if you need more time? Well, there's also the emergency deadline, which is after the on-time bonus deadline. The emergency deadline is if something goes wrong, you need more, time for the paper for whatever reason. This gives you full credit for the paper. You don't get the on-time bonus, but you get the full credit. Now, what if you miss the emergency deadline and you still want to do a paper? Well, there's the 50% grade paper deadline, also known as the desperation deadline. If you turn the paper in by then, you get your score cut in half because it's so late. And that's always the last class of the semester. Now, what if things go like really wrong, when the emergency deadline won't do? Well, you can request an extension or even a special extension. And you need, of course, appropriate excuses for this. And excuses would be, things that would prevent you from writing. For example, unfortunate case, I had a student who a wall fell on them and, broke a lot of their bones. And they were in like this body cast and they could not use their arms. So they definitely get an extension. Sometimes people get called up for National Guard service and are deployed overseas for briefly or deployed for, hurricane or, a tropical storm or something. And yeah, that's an extension as well. About other things, unless there's documentation, I can't grant extensions if someone just kind of ran out of time or was having trouble with the paper. It's got to be something serious enough that prevents someone from writing, and it's got to have a official documentation for it. And that is the end of the generic syllabus. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the future.